can tell me then, based on what you've heard today, what really matters in political campaigns? I hear money, I heard participation, voting, honesty. Honesty. I tell you what matters. What matters is you. You matter, right? You, because you're going to be the voters. You're going to be the ones who are involved, all right? Without you, without your engagement in your school, without your engagement in your community, without your engagement in the civic blood of this nation, all of this, all we've talked about today, means diddly and squat. And you put those together, what do you have? You have diddly squat. All right? So you matter. So let me ask this. How many of you are planning to vote? I see every single hand up here. Unless, of course, you're not able to vote, and then they'll be illegal. All right? At some point, all of you should be registered to vote. Every hand here up. Look, we've said it before, I'll say it again. Your vote matters. Less than 600 votes separated George W. Bush from Al Gore in this great state of Florida. Gave Bush the presidency. A difference of 1 vote in the Tennessee lovely state, go Gators, and Knights, gave women the right to vote nationally. And I don't know if you ask me, you ask my wife and my daughter, I think women voting is probably a pretty good thing, yeah? Right? Yeah, gentlemen, the answer is yes. All right? But is voting all that matters? Is voting the only way you can be engaged in civic life? Of course not. All right, so somebody raise your hand. Who can tell me what's another way you can be involved and engaged? Yes, sir. Working within your community. What's another one? Somebody else. Running for office. Fantastic. What's another one? One more. Yes, sir. Supporting somebody that runs for office. That's fantastic. Well, let's talk about Florida for a second. All right? You guys have some good examples. When I throw out the phrase civic health, what comes to mind?
Obamacare.
That would be health care, although certainly that could be an element of civic health. All right, let's take a look at Florida real quick. All right, this is a Lou Frey Institute website developed by the folks at the Lou Frey Institute, and it is floridacivchealth.com. All right, I'm just going to scroll down, and as I get to the end of the page, I want you to tell me one thing that stands out to you about this great state of Florida and these areas and measures of civic health. This, by the way, $25 is the measure. All right, what stands out to you? Florida's not, I want to say suck. That's only, we only talk about the New York Yankees without that language. All right? So, Florida is not doing so good. Compare that to a state like, oh, I don't know, Massachusetts. Well, let's pretend Massachusetts is up here and it's higher. All right? So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about ways that we can get engaged, we can get involved, and we can address and change some of these numbers. All right? So it gives me great pleasure today to introduce you to Tyler Yeargain, who is Legislative Affairs Coordinator for the University of Central Florida Student Government Association. All right? And so now I'm going to switch over to this side of the table. Pretend I'm walking here. All right? Much more comfortable. All right, so Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do in your role with student government, and how and why did you choose to get involved?
All right, well, first off, thank you for everybody for coming, and thank you to the Lou Frey Institute for having me. Like you said, my name is Tyler Yeargain, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Coordinator for the UCF Student Government Association. What that means on a practical level is that I am SGA's lobbyist. I'm SGA's lobbyist in the city of Orlando, in the state of Florida, and in DC. And what I spend all my time doing is figuring out what UCF SGA's legislative priorities are. One of the biggest ones that we're working on right now is either making Bright Futures available during the summer, because just so you guys know, it's not, or eliminating the 9-hour summer requirement, which there is, because our students don't have access to funding for required hours. One of the other things that I do, and these are actually two very big things, is I organize SGA's annual trips to Orlando City Hall, and the state capitol. And what we do at both those places is we lobby on the issues that are important to us. I'm also in charge of organizing voter registration drives and basically communicating what's going on in state government, in federal government, and local government to our students and how it affects them.
Great. And so how did you choose to get involved? Why did you choose to get involved?
In the spring semester, I had the ability to join the SGA Senate for a brief period of time to fill somebody else's term. And I was only there for 3 months, but once I was there, I realized that this is absolutely something that I had to do. And then in April, we had our presidential elections for SGA, and recently elected President Zona asked me to join her cabinet, an offer that I enthusiastically accepted, and then I was sworn in, and we moved on from there.
Fantastic. So what sorts of things did you do as a high school student to be involved?
My involvement as a high school student was also in student government. I was sophomore class president. That didn't go overwhelmingly well, but most of what I did was I taught myself more about politics. All of my involvement can trace back to 5th grade during the 2004 presidential election, and I realized that I did not know anything about politics, so I determined to teach myself everything that there is to know. So I did. I followed elections very closely. In 2008, I volunteered on one of the presidential campaigns. I repeated that in 2012, and really I just tried to be an active citizen.
Excellent. So every student in here has ambitions. Some of them, I imagine, probably want to go to college. Yeah, raise your hand if you want to go to college. That's good. Excellent. Good to hear. All right. I have no doubt we'll all see you back again on this wonderful campus at some point. But what are some ways, Tyler, that students can be involved politically and civically on a college campus?
First off, how many of you guys have any desire at all to go to UCF?
Every hand in the room should go up.
It might seem intimidating if you're a student thinking about going to a university that has 60-some-odd thousand students. It's a big campus. Not everybody's at our main campus, not everybody's an undergraduate, but it can almost seem as though it's overwhelming, that there's no way that you're going to be able to have a unique experience. But really nothing could be further from the truth, because out of 60-some-odd thousand students, in our recent Senate elections, which we had last week, we had about 4,000 or 5,000 people participate. In our presidential elections, we had about 7,000 people, and that was about a 20% increase from the year before. So your vote matters everywhere that you go, but in student government, that's especially true. Student government is probably one of the best ways out there to get involved, because we deal with real things. UCF-SGA has a $19 million budget. That's more than a lot of cities have. When we administer the budget, we're exercising a lot of discretion. We are one of the only universities in the country that has almost absolute autonomy over our budget. We don't really need UCF administration to sign off on what we do. We decide where the money goes. We decide how much of the money goes to certain places. If you get involved in student government, which there are so many ways that we make that available, the ability to affect change is endless. I mean, I started off in Senate, and I only spent 3 months there, and then I joined the executive branch. In 3 months, I was able to accomplish a lot of things that I'm really proud of. So getting involved in student government is absolutely one of the best things that you can do. One of the other really important things is getting involved with the local or the campus organizations and advocacy and politics and stuff like that. We have college Republicans on campus, we have college Democrats, college Libertarians, Young Americans for Liberty, Normal, which deals with marijuana legalization. We have National Organization for Women. There are so many different organizations on campus that you can get involved with. And a lot of them are very active organizations that do tabling, that do events, that have events in terms of like rallies and supports and stuff like that. And the other most important thing that you can do is you can vote. I know that you've heard a lot about that, and I know that you recognize that that's an important thing to do, but on a college campus, it can be difficult to vote sometimes. In 2014, we had an early voting site on campus, but only about 2,000 of our students actually used it. It was the worst performing early voting site in Orange County. There's really no reason for that. I mean, it was literally right on campus. There were shuttles that UCF-SGA pays for that went to that location. We had college Democrats, college Republicans, Charlie Crist, Rick Scott, all having their forces converge and try to get people to the polls, but they didn't do it. So voting is incredibly important, because you might not actually believe this, but state legislators do care about you. They care about university students. There are a lot of UCF alumni in the legislature, and they want to hear from you. So one of the best things that you can do is get involved in some form or another. Contact your legislators. If you're in their district, if you went to their alma mater, they want to hear from you. But the fact of the matter is that not that many people actually go out of their way to contact them, as that Civic Health website showed.
So let's talk about why that matters, why you should contact your legislators, why you should be involved. Can you give us any examples from your experience, both past and even present or future, how being civically engaged as a college student can actually make a difference?
Well, the most important thing that you need to realize is that the place that you're living right now is one of the most important political battlegrounds in the country. I was an organizing fellow in 2012 for the Obama campaign, and the I-4 corridor, which admittedly isn't just UCF but goes all the way down to Tampa as well, was one of the three most important places in the country when it came to what their campaign was looking for in terms of voter turnout. The other place was Northern Ohio and then Northern Virginia. But Central Florida is high up on that list. And in 2008, college Democrats on campus registered 12,000 voters. Out of a campus of not even 60,000 at that time, 12,000 voters is really, really impressive, especially when you consider overall student apathy. Your vote does make a difference, and your ability to participate does make a difference. What I said about contacting your legislators, your lawmakers, that's absolutely true. Lawmakers care about your personal stories. One of the biggest ways that I can think about that in particular is, you guys don't have to deal with this at this point. It's something that people at UCF and my class have to deal with. But you're charged excess tuition for if you exceed the amount of credits that you're technically supposed to have to complete a major. So if you, and some of that does include AP credits, include IB credits, it includes dual enrollment credits. So if you stay here in the eyes of the state of Florida for too long, then you can be charged double tuition. Which is fun for everybody who has to do that. But some of my friends are in the position of they're charged double tuition even though they don't actually have to pay it. So they pay it up front and then the state gives them a rebate for it later. But if you're depending on Pell Grants for that, if you are working jobs to make that happen, how's that going to work for you? All of those stories, if you tell those to the governor, if you tell those to the state legislators, they care about those stories. They care about all of that because they don't. You know, it can be hard sometimes to have faith in your government and to have faith in your elected officials, but first off, they depend on your votes, so they have a very clear interest in making you happy, but you're also their constituents. So you have an enormous ability to affect change.
Great. So connecting back to that and affecting change, how do you see involvement in the college community as translating to the broader civic health, not only of our UCF community and of our state community, but really the health of the nation?
I think a lot of it comes down to voter turnout. In House District 49, which UCF is in, it's basically just Winter Park and areas around UCF. Turnout last year crashed from 2012. We had our state representative, Joe Saunders, who was elected in 2012. There were maybe 40, 50,000 votes cast in the district. He ended up losing re-election last year by about 1,000 votes in turnout that overall was maybe 25,000. I mean, your getting out and voting is incredibly important. I mean, I imagine that it probably sounds cliche at this point that voting is important, but it really, really is, because you want people to take you seriously. You want people, you know, everybody doubts the millennials. Everybody doubts that. You don't have to really go that far to see news articles criticizing you guys, people making fun of you guys for taking selfies and stuff like that. I mean, who of us hasn't done that? That's just something that happens. But people don't take you seriously. They don't think that you're involved. They don't think that you care. They think that you're apathetic. This is a chance to prove them wrong. If you get out and vote, if you get out and get involved, I mean, at every single event that I've been to, I was the youngest person there. I've been to fundraisers, I've organized, I've done so many different things. I've gone door to door. I went door to door when I was 14 years old. Not many 14-year-olds do that. If you show people that you care about the future of this country, if you show people that you want to get involved, they will listen. If nothing else, because a lot of them see it as a novelty that somebody your age is interested in politics. It is, but it really shouldn't be. All of you should be involved, and you can, again, I'm probably sounding cliche, but it is, you can have an enormous impact. You can really affect change if you get out, if you get involved, if you do the things that, you know, the highest turnout demographic in our country is old white people. And old white people are not the most representative of this country. We're becoming more diverse. We're becoming younger. there's incredible population growth in people of color. And we are clinging to this electorate that is so out of touch with what you guys are and who you guys are that you have a chance to change that. And you really should, because it's your obligation to.
Great. And I think Tyler made some very good points about being involved and really an obligation. All right? We all have rights. You all know your rights. But you have to keep in mind we all have I hope you all know your rights, right? We all have a responsibility as well to exercise those rights and our duties and obligations as American citizens. So we're going to go ahead and throw it open to the floor now for questions, if there are any questions, and we're looking forward to responding to them.
This isn't really about involvement in terms of getting involved in campaigns, but I have a question for you. Since you are on campus and you're part of the government, there's a bill in the House right now to legalize registered concealed weapons on campus. I want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, the first thing that's important to note is that I don't speak for student government. I can tell you that that is not something that we believe is a good idea, essentially. We think that it's dangerous for students to have guns on campus. We think that that's not something that, I guess on a personal level, I believe that if you go into a classroom, you shouldn't have to think about whether any of your classmates have a weapon with them. I don't think that our professors need to worry about, if a student's getting a little unruly or a little bit aggressive, if they have a weapon on them. The other thing that we need to consider is that, and this isn't something that people talk about, but if people on campus have weapons, the university is going to get sued. The estimated cost to put a liability shield, which would protect the university from lawsuits, is about $50 or $60 million. That money it would be pulled from tuition, which could cause tuition dollars to increase. In spring, the UCF SGA Senate passed a resolution in opposition to concealed weapons on campus. That's not almost every single, in fact, actually, yes, every single student government association in the state of Florida is opposed to legislation that would allow concealed carry on campus.
All right, so I'm part of student government and stuff like that, but what specifically have you done here at UCF? Just give us some examples of what you've specifically done as part of student government at a university.
Okay. One of the best examples that I can think of, we do actually have power in student government. We are one of the most powerful SJs in the country because our students have such autonomy when it comes to making decisions. One of my proudest accomplishments so far, and it's not done yet, is, are any of you familiar with Chloe Arenas? Okay, she's a UCF student who, in late June, she died when she lost control of her car and she crashed into a body of water and drowned. And that's actually something that happens all over the state and disproportionately in Florida. Florida has consistently had the most deaths in the country that are traffic-related deaths from drowning. And that was caused, at least in part, by a lack of guardrails around bodies of water. And that's such a small issue to focus on, but the lack of guardrail resulted in somebody's death, and that person was a member of our community. So when I saw that her friend was pushing for a statewide effort to put guardrails around bodies of water, I reached out to her and I said, UCF SGA has a almost six-figure lobbying contract with a local lobbying firm. I'm in charge of setting legislative priorities. I want this to be one of our legislative priorities. So I scheduled a meeting with our lobbyists and state legislators, and we agreed on what the bill's text would look like. We came up with a legislative strategy for putting it through. The UCF SGA Senate took a position in favor of it. The administration took a position in favor of it. And there's no guarantee that the law is going to come into effect, but we've made tremendous progress. I mean, Chloe died a little more than 3 months ago, and we've moved from that tragic event happening to having a bill that's bipartisan, it's sponsored by a Republican and a Democrat, that's likely to move through the legislature. And to me, I would consider that to be a pretty serious accomplishment because it's something that would, it could very well save UCF students' lives. And to me, that's a very practical thing.
Over here.
We have another question over here.
Okay. Hi. So I know we've talked a lot about, rising de-alignment and low voting turnout, especially in midterms. And I know that you guys have been doing the early voting here on UCF, but is there anything that the parties themselves have been trying to do to reach out to people and increase those or address those two issues?
I think that's a really good question. I would say that I worked with the Chris campaign pretty closely last year. I saw more direct involvement from the Chris campaign, from the Florida Democratic Party than I did with the Republican Party of Florida or the Rick Scott campaign. Right now on campus, there are paid canvassers from the Florida Democratic Party who are registering people to vote. Over the last couple of weeks, they've registered somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 voters, which is good in that amount of time. I wish that there was more. I wish that there was more involvement in that. Both campaigns had a presence on campus. Democrats are more involved. But the onus is really on individual people to register to vote. And the thing that can be difficult is, you all are in high school now, and if you end up at UCF, which you should, UCF stands for opportunity, then the question that you have to ask is, what do you do with your voter registration? Do you change it to your new address? Do you keep it where your parents live? What do you do? And in that case, where do you vote? Do you request an absentee ballot? Because the rules for that have changed. It's such a complicated process that the parties can only do so much. The PACs can only do so much. The interest groups can only do so much. So much of it, unfortunately, that is the reality. I don't like that. As the person in charge of voter registration drives, I hate that. But it's difficult for students to vote. And I wish that the parties were doing more.
Okay, so this is more of like a clarification question. You said that on UCF campus, most people who are actively voting tend to be the Democrats. Oh, maybe not.
The Democratic Party has a greater presence on campus when it comes to registering people to vote. I mean, UCF students are more aligned with the Democratic Party than they are with the Republican Party. But all that I meant was that the Democratic Party is more involved in getting people registered on campus.
Is that as the country as a whole, or usually just in like a college setting?
I can't necessarily speak to that. I mean, campaigns of both parties, both political parties, have a vested interest in registering citizens to vote. Each party has a greater interest in registering the people they think are likely to vote for them to register to vote. And on college campuses, that tends to be the Democratic Party more so than anything else.
We have the next question over here.
How do you feel about censorship of ideas on college campuses? With the trend of censorship of ideas that oppose certain vocal liberal ideals, which is more important to you, freedom of speech or social justice?
Good luck with that.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that we can have both. I wouldn't call it censorship to say that we need to respect cultural sensitivities, to respect what can be difficult for some people to talk about or to hear about. I think that we need to understand the country that we live in. We live in a country that's diverse. We live in a country with incredibly different views and opinions and religious backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds. And I think that it is a perfectly reasonable thing to say that we shouldn't say things that are incredibly offensive or incredibly rude. I can't say that on campus I've experienced any form of censorship or anything like that. I've never been told not to articulate my opinion. I've never heard of anybody being told not to articulate their opinion. Never heard of a professor. All of my professors have opinions. I'm a political science major. I'm aware of their opinions very much. And UCF isn't necessarily, in terms of faculty, the most liberal campus in the United States. It certainly is not. But the thing that it really comes down to is respect. On both sides of the aisle, when I've had professors, none of them have attempted to push their views on me. One of my favorite professors, who served as the chair of my thesis committee, is very, 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 very conservative. He and I agree on no issues at all, but not once has he ever told me that, oh, you're wrong, or anything like that. There's incredible academic freedom at our university and at universities all over the country, and it's certainly possible to have that while also having respect for other people.
Well said.
We have another question over here.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for your hard work. It's nice seeing someone with that much passion up there talking. So downtown UCF campus, the funding for that failed through the legislature. And I was curious, what is SGA's position on that? And will they pursue bringing that up or lobbying for representatives to possibly raise that issue up again? And if not, or if so, why?
I couldn't have picked a better question for me to be asked. UCF SGA loves the downtown expansion. We think that it's a great opportunity. How many of you are familiar with the downtown expansion? Okay, not many of you. It's a really great opportunity. It's one of the biggest things that we're doing. I mean, we're obviously moving some of our college downtown. That's going to be really great for individual majors like journalism who can be closer to where things are happening. As far as I'm aware, the entire College of Health and Public Affairs is moving to downtown. One of the biggest things that we're doing is because that campus is going to be bordering Paramore. The children in that area will be able to come to UCF at a significantly discounted rate. I believe that we're offering them scholarships to do so. We're providing daycare opportunities and stuff like that. So it's a great thing for the community, and it's a great thing for UCF as well, because it allows us to grow, it allows us to expand our influence. I am personally committed, and President Zona is personally committed to seeing that through this year. Governor Scott said that the problem when he vetoed that $15 million was that it didn't go through the proper procedure for any university expenditure, in that it didn't go through the Board of Governors, even though USF received a similar expansion without going through that process. We're in support of it. When we go up to Tallahassee in January, that will be the #1 thing that we're lobbying on, because we believe that it's going to increase the ability of a lot of people to go to college, especially in the downtown area, because UCF is a commuter campus. Most people don't live on campus. A lot of people commute a very far ways. A lot of people still live at home in Orlando and they come here. If they have the ability to go downtown instead to a much closer campus, that's better for them, that's better for us. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this from anyone, but parking on UCF sucks. There's 13,000 spaces and about 50,000 students who are at the central campus. As you can tell, those numbers are not the same. So the ability to alleviate some of that is something welcomed by our students as well. And we're confident that this year it'll go through the legislature and it'll be signed by the governor.
Is the Student Government Association a good way to get into the mainstream politics?
I would say so. I would say that it depends on what you do. I think that it all comes down to how you can sell it on your resume, I think. I can put on my resume that I voted for and authorized the spending of a $19 million budget. That's true and that's not. I didn't sit on the committee that approved it, but I voted for it, and I certainly looked at it. So it all comes down to resume building. That's a big deal. Serving an SGA at the second largest university in the country, the largest in the state of Florida, it's a big deal. Serving in multiple branches is also a big deal because it shows that, at least from my perspective, it shows that I didn't piss people off in Senate, that I created a positive impression of myself for other people, because I was always working. I was always sponsoring legislation. I was always trying to make SGA better. And because of that, I was personally nominated by President Zona to serve in her cabinet. So it shows that I'm able to deal with sensitive issues. It shows that I'm able to work hard. I do event planning, I do programming in my position, and that's not something that people all across campus get a chance to do. So yes, I would say that getting involved in SJ is a great way to enter politics in general. It exposes you to a lot of opportunities to meet people. I've met a lot of people already. At our orientation this past year, I was working orientation for SJ, and I saw a bald guy with a white shirt that said Republican Party of Florida Chairman. And because I'm crazy and I just know all the state legislators, I thought, oh, that's State Representative Blaise Ingoglia. So I went over and introduced myself, and he was kind of surprised that he was recognized at UCF orientation. But he agreed to come speak to us because I recognized him and because his daughter's coming here. So there's a lot of opportunities to network. There's a lot of opportunities to get to know people. So I would absolutely recommend it. Really, wherever you go, SJ is a great way to get involved. Some universities, some colleges have more power devolved to the SJ than others. We, as I said, are one of the most powerful.
And building on what Tyler just said, too, I think it's important to point out that, Tyler, obviously, a Democrat, right? But he went over and made a connection and made a network with the leader of the Republican Party in the state of Florida, all right? It's important that you look at it as an opportunity to network. If you look at our state legislators, a lot of them served in student government when they were in college. Florida Blue Key and a number of other organizations connected to that. It's a great opportunity to network, a great opportunity to be involved, and as Tyler has already indicated, to make a difference.
The other thing that I'll add on that just really quickly is that most issues that affect universities are pretty nonpartisan, non-ideological issues. The reason that most SGAs are opposed to concealed carrying weapons on campus, for instance, isn't because we hate the Second Amendment or we don't want students to exercise their right for it. It's because we are genuinely concerned about the negative impact that it'll have on university life. We're concerned about the costs that it'll have in terms of finances in particular, but people could lose their lives as well. SGA typically doesn't get involved in the hot button political issues of LGBT issues or abortion or anything like that, because while we certainly have opinions on it, we are nonpartisan. We are only concerned with what affects us. It's one of the reasons that we take such a public position on the downtown expansion, because that is one of the few things that the legislature does that directly impacts us. So regardless of party affiliation, regardless of personal ideology, you can make a difference and you can network with people. While I certainly do have political views of my own, that doesn't at any point get into the decisions that I make or anything like that.
We have the next question over here.
Great.
Hi, my name is Steven, and you mentioned many students not voting in the previous election. I think Renee Placencia is your current state representative. What is your plan to get more people to vote? And what are you doing to try and influence Representative Placencia and issues that concern you?
I'm glad that you mentioned Rene Placencia. He's known as Coach P, and that's what I'll refer to him as because we do have a personal relationship. Coach P is one of the sponsors of Chloe's Law that I mentioned earlier. I've met with him a couple times. He's a great guy. He's a Republican. He and I disagree on a lot of things, but he's a UCF grad. He's committed to working for UCF and working with UCF, and he's been a great partner in everything that we've done so far. In terms of increasing voter turnout and stuff like that, one of the biggest things is TurboVote. Most people might not be familiar with TurboVote, but what that is it's a website where you can go and you can basically register to vote, with the exception that you can't submit the form online because Florida doesn't yet have online voter registration. What it'll instead do is it'll generate a form that it'll mail to you in a pre-stamped, pre-addressed envelope, and you can send that off to the supervisor of elections. They'll send you reminders about when you vote. They'll send you reminders about absentee requests and stuff like that. So that's one of my biggest plans for that. I have also scheduled voter registration drives at all of our regional campuses. We have campuses all over the state, from Ocala down all the way to a whole bunch of places in Brevard County. So I'm committed to registering people to vote wherever they are. For National Voter Registration Day, which was a couple Tuesdays ago, I had the Orange County Supervisor of Elections come out and register people to vote. And as I've said, the Florida Democratic Party is on campus registering people to vote. I welcome the Republicans to join them in that effort. I support both of their efforts because voter registration is a truly nonpartisan thing. Individual organizations, parties, they are not allowed to tell somebody, oh, you're a Republican? Sorry, we're the Democrats, we can't register you. Or they can't destroy the form. Those would be huge, egregious violations of the law. So it truly is a nonpartisan thing, and I do have a lot of plans to move it forward in a nonpartisan fashion.
We have our next question right here.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Tyler. Is the process of joining SGA in college the same as high school?
No. SGA in high school, I did SGA in high school, as I said. It's really child's play compared to what we do now. When I was in high school, we were really excited a year that we raised $4,000 for our accounts. And considering that we now oversee $19 million, that's a pretty big step up. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. All three of our branches in SJ have mentorship programs that are available to first-time students in college. They're really easy to get involved with. I was recently, I'm not in Greek life, but I recently acquired a little in that I now have a mentee from our Student Body President's Advisory Council. So there's a lot of ways that people can get involved. People can run for Senate. As I said, we recently had our Senate elections. We had freshmen who ran in Senate elections. They can get involved the second that they step onto campus. Anybody can run for Senate or President if they get the amount of signatures that they need. It's a much more difficult process because difficult in the sense that it can be harder to get certain positions, easier in the sense that, there's a real incentive to do it. In high school SGA, it was more of a popularity contest. There's actual issues, there's actual differences between candidates and stuff like that. But I would encourage everybody to get involved. It's a really great thing, and I wish that I'd done it a lot sooner.
And unfortunately, this will have to be our last question over here.
Thank you. So my question, I have 3 separate questions, but the first 2 are short.
Okay.
I promise they're short. Sure, I'll limit it to 1. How do you think we can, I see a lot of political apathy, especially among people my age. For example, if I can get a little personal, when they were passing the act or whatever it was to legalize marijuana, my brother said that he was for it, but he didn't get up and vote. And I went and argued with him for hours, and he would not get up and vote. And so my question to you personally, because I think you're around my age, I can't really tell yet.
I'm 21.
Okay, so how do you feel, what's the way to, decrease political apathy in people our age? How do we get people to become more involved? What do you feel is the best solution for our generation,
Great
personally?
I wish there was a silver bullet. I wish there was one thing that I could tell you that would really do it. But there isn't, unfortunately. I think it's a combination of a whole bunch of different things. A lot of people think that their vote doesn't count. And it's really easy, I think, to come up with examples of times that votes have counted. We conduct there's about 500,000 elected officials in the United States. So there are hundreds of thousands of elections taking place every year. So many of those are decided by just a handful of votes. So many of those are tied. I mean, we have provisions in our statutes accounting for what happens if there's a tie. So your vote does count mathematically. If you're talking about a presidential election, then okay, maybe that's not as true because you're dealing with millions of people all over the country and millions of other people in the state of Florida. I think that one of the most helpful ways to look at voting is not necessarily my vote mathematically matters, but self-expression is important. Self-expression is one of the things that our country was founded on. It's one of the things that our Constitution protects. It's one of the things that people fight for every year before the Supreme Court, before the legislature, before the president. They fight to have their voices heard. And when you consider the fact that in countries all over the world, people are literally dying for the right to vote, when you consider the fact that so many people have fought in our country for the right to vote, women fought for the right to vote, people of color fought for the right to vote, to me, it's almost incomprehensible that we're not fully exercising that right. It is the ultimate form of self-expression. It is something that, it doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. It doesn't matter how you vote. It matters to you, but it doesn't matter to me as a person because all that matters to me is that you vote, is that you express your beliefs. If you're a communist, if you're an anarchist, if you're a fascist, if you're a socialist, you can vote, and you can vote for whomever you want, and you can write in people. If your ultimate form of self-expression is writing in Santa Claus, then by all means, Godspeed, do it. I think that we need to view voting as an obligation, yes, but really, if you care about free speech, if you care about freedom of religion, if you care about freedom of assembly, if you care about any of that, then voting has to be the most important thing that you do because it is the most impactful way that you can possibly express yourself. So I would say that that's a complicated message, and that can be hard to condense to a 30-second soundbite, but ultimately it's about a cultural shift. It's about making voting easier. It's about making voting more accessible to people. It's about limiting barriers and obstacles that we have in that. But what it really comes down to is we have to believe that voting matters to us. At a core level, we have to accept that voting matters to us. And whether we affect an outcome or not, we still play a part in the process.